Is it time to cut back on expenses with the market being down and inflation rising?
Yep. Good question. We're getting this question often right now from our clients. We have some pretty smart clients, and they really kind of understand, what is happening here. And we've talked about this with them extensively. So here's how I would look at that, and really kind of almost a formula for how you might determine whether you should be doing this. Take a look at all the resources that you have that are in kind of the cash savings, checkings, how much money is in money markets. So we have investment accounts and we keep some money in money markets that we withdraw from for the monthly distributions that people take out to live off of and such. So you add all that up, all right, whatever that dollar amount is, and then say to yourself, and everybody's kind of asking me for a rule of thumb for how much cash I should have. And I can tell you, after doing this for over 35 years, there is no rule of thumb that works for everybody. That's true anyway. All this stuff. That's kind of a frustrating thing in our business. All these rules of thumb, I hardly ever see them applied. For a couple people maybe. And so the one that really works is to take a look. And let's say I have $100,000, and I'd say to myself, okay, what if that was 50,000? Would I still feel like I have enough cash if I needed it? Or what if that was 25? At some point, I'm going to get to a number that I can feel it, right? Almost like makes my heart race a little bit. No, that's too low. So let's just say it's 50,000. Okay, so I've got 100 all together, adding up everything. I've got, $50,000 I could go down to. So I could live off of that cash for that 50,000. So how much am I taking out on average? Okay, let's just say it's $1,000, right? So that I got to think about that. Okay, so if it's $1,000, that's 50 months. We're working towards 5 years. Is the market going to be higher in 5 years than now? Historically, on average, the answer would be yes, on average. Can be lower.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that I'd make an adjustment. I'd keep spending that 1,000 because I've got so much time before I have to start selling stock or bond to replenish that cash, right? Let's say though that I'm taking out 10,000 just to make up a number, right? Now I got 5 months
Mm-hmm.
before I'm going to be required to go sell some stock and bond in some of my portfolios to replenish that cash. Could the market be lower in 5 months? Yes. Could be higher,
Mm-hmm.
but it could definitely be lower. So now I have to say to myself, okay, I need to maybe cut back if I can. Can I get that down to 8,000? Is there something I can do to reduce that? Because I'm heading into a down market, I'm pulling out so much that it's going to require me to sell stock and bond at a possibly a lower point. And if I can reduce that in some form or fashion, you should. Yeah?
Yep.
So that's it. I know it seems a little complicated, but that's the answer. It's how we answer it. It's how we go through with the clients. I get somebody call up and, hey, should we be cutting back? I do the little calculations. I said, look, you have, 29 months worth of money at current, and we gathered extra cash at the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the year. That turned out to be a really good idea. And so, you have 29 months worth. All right, I'd keep going with what you have for now. When that gets down, maybe half of that, we'll start talking again. Maybe you do have to start cutting back if the market is still down and hasn't recovered, right? So, it depends, right? It depends on each situation. But it's a really good question. You can figure it out. It's not rocket science. It's possible.
Yeah, and maybe it is just time to check your budget. There's always fat in our budgets, and maybe I have an extra streaming subscription that I don't use anymore, and I've primarily switched over to another platform. Do I need to be spending that money every month? No. And small things like that, you can check, maybe a magazine subscription that you don't read anymore, stuff like that, that's super easy to cut off.
Yep.
Yeah, just go ahead and that. And also, maybe it's not time to, book a very high-end vacation or big remodel project. And so maybe you keep what the status quo is, but you just don't take on any big expenses.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is what I talk about. Is it time to cut back on my standard of living?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm not watching that streaming service and I'm paying for it, That's not cutting back on my standard of living by going through and spending some time and finding those things. If I'm not reading that magazine subscription and I'm still paying for it, right? Now, big trip versus little trip. I don't know. Personally, when things get tight, I'm more satisfied with the littler cost trip because it makes me feel good. Going on that big expensive trip when I'm worried about my finances actually detracts from the trip, right? Remodel versus not remodel. That gets into some weird areas because there can be some real problems with your house. This bathroom doesn't work at all, you know. So, but many times those can be delayed too. And maybe if you delay and things do fall apart, you might be able to do it for cheaper at some point
Yeah.
in the future too, or at least even find a contractor who'll talk to you, which would be nice. So yeah, that's how I would look at it. It's a really good question, you know, and you know, should you be reducing your standard of living in that scenario where you had 50,000, you're taking 10,000 a month, and you only got 5 months before? The answer is yes, yes. Yeah, in that scenario where you're only taking 1,000 out and you got 50 months, the answer would be no. I'd
Yep.
still be doing what Easton says and looking for things and cutting back. I mean, that's something you should do all the time, but certainly not a bad thing now. Maybe I'd be delaying some remodels and big expensive trips too, you know, as far as that goes, but just because it makes me feel better about my overall situation. But you know, should you be reducing your standard of living or not? We all ended up, a lot of people ended up reducing standard of living during the 2008 downturn, right? Because it was so big, you know, and it wasn't just you, everybody was in the same boat. We're all doing it and such too. And so, you know, that's kind of what we have to be asking ourselves right now as we go through this particular process. That leading economic indicator curling over and being 2% off of its high is a really big deal to me. I've been studying that index for a really long time. And personally, you know, from a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint, I pay attention to that. When that keels over, I'm going to start to, you know, reduce things and cut fat and do things that don't, you know, that I don't really need right now. So I would consider that as part of this process, as far as that goes.